Hello, this is Matthew Armstrong and welcome to Transformation Talk. Today I have the great pleasure of speaking to Aida Honor. Aida is a wife, mother, entrepreneur, also the mother of five children. She's the author of Vegan Cookbook, the Native Style Cookbook, and also has given birth to 3 of her children at home unassisted with just her husband to assist, and 2 water births as well. And also she's bringing their children up homeschooling as well. So it's a pleasure to be speaking with you, Aida, and I really look forward to learning. Really, you've taken a conscious way of living, not going with the model that is presented to us in the world of this is how you live your life, this is the model. Sometimes we, I suppose, got to question that, and if it's not working for us, then maybe there's a higher way. And one of the reasons that we wanted to talk to you is that it looks like you've chosen a higher path, a more conscious path.
And thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. So glad to speak with you about topics that I'm really passionate about, and I'm really excited to talk with you.
Okay, awesome. So the first thing I'd like to chat about is just being vegan, being a healthy vegan, and also being a vegan mother, bringing your children up vegan through pregnancy, bringing them up. So maybe just go back a bit further before that and just ask. I just want to ask, how did you come to be where you are, doing the things the way you're doing them? Was there suddenly like a switch that went on at some stage, or were you brought up that way yourself? How did it all? What was your journey really?
Yes, my natural foods journey all began with childhood. I was raised by my mother and her twin sister, and they were both vegetarian chefs. And I was raised in the Caribbean mostly, and so a lot of the foods that I like to cook for my family are based on traditional Caribbean and African cuisine. And I tried to, spice it up a little bit and add foods from different cultures to keep it fun and also healthy. But when we were living in Belize, when I was a small child, a lot of the foods that we ate were grown right there on farms and in gardens, and we ate from the earth and we gardened our own food. And so that's how it started. And as I got older, I realized that I could not tolerate dairy. When we were living in California and I was about 12 years old, my mother loved to eat pizza, and I always had to take all the cheese off of my side of the pizza, and I just could not digest it. And so I knew from that point that there were certain foods that my body couldn't tolerate. And as I became a young adult, I pushed out all dairy products and all animal byproducts, and slowly became vegan. And now I'm just really happy to be able to offer that healthy diet to my children. And I find that we're not lacking in certain nutrients and vitamins or calcium with our vegan lifestyle.
All right. That's fantastic, and I can definitely relate with the dairy aspect. If I eat dairy, it brings on asthmatic symptoms, and I can't breathe properly, and I get a lot of mucus and inflammation and everything. So yeah, I can certainly relate to that. And once I took dairy out of my life, I had a big difference in my own health.
Yeah, it seems like it's just your body letting you know, hey, these are foods that are foreign, they're not made for human consumption, and it's a good idea to steer clear, especially if your body's giving you signals to let you know that this can be actually not only unhealthy but hazardous to your health. So yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. And what sort of vegan diet do you eat, or do you recommend? Is there a certain percentage of raw food, or do you get a certain percentage of protein from certain places? How do you generally do it?
Well, when my husband and I first became married and had our first child, we did consume a lot of soy products, and we did so actually up until our third child was born. Actually, our fourth child was born, we decided to cut out soy. And the reason why we cut out soy products was because I met a person who had cut out soy from her diet and her family's diet because she had been doing research on the types of the way that soy affects the human body, and some research that was done on animals where soy is being put into their pet foods and how it was affecting the animals' bodies. And I got really excited, and I was like, no, this can't be possible, because I was raised on soy, right, and living in Belize. My mother used to do actual lectures and teach about the benefits of soy. Mm-hmm. So I just really could not get my mind around the fact that this might not necessarily be the healthiest thing for my family. And with raising sons and the estrogen levels, and so there was a lot going into that. And I guess about 4 years ago, we were growing a garden, and our first family raised bed garden. And I was looking at the garden, and I said, you know what? Everything that we eat, we should be able to grow it, or we should be able to know exactly where it's coming from, and it should not be over-processed. And my children agreed. They would just go out to the garden, pick the beans, and eat them right out of the garden, or the squash, or, you know, it was just this fantastic feeling knowing that you could grow your own food and you didn't have to go to a store where everything was over-processed. And so right now in our pantry, the only things that we have that are canned foods are organic tomato sauce, just for as a backup. The only frozen foods that we generally get are frozen organic vegetables as a backup product, you know, when other foods are scarce, other fresh vegetables are scarce. So we really don't depend too much on processed foods, but we do use like organic flour, and one day I hope to be able to make my own flour. I'm not at that point yet. And what I like to tell people, especially when they ask me questions about my cookbook, is that we are in our process. My family and I have been doing really well in starting to eat more raw vegetables and starting to eat more greens, more just more colorful foods. But it took a long time for my children's taste buds to become used to certain flavors and certain tastes. So I had to, when I was making the cookbook, the Native Style Cookbook, a family-oriented approach to the plant-based diet, the reason why I was making that cookbook was because my children would not eat collard greens. They would not eat lettuce, and there were just certain vegetables that they would just not touch. And I was saying to myself, this is the only vegan family that I know that won't eat vegetables. And, you know, you can't eat potatoes all the time. And really, they're not the healthiest thing for you to begin with. So the cookbook was really my journey into implementing and bringing in more colorful foods into my family's life. And so that the way that I had to do that was to actually introduce the foods to them in a creative way. And my children range from 7 years down to my baby, who's 9 months. So at the time I was expecting, you know, I was pregnant with him, and my other children, they had to be in the kitchen with me. They had to help me make the foods. Like if it was a kale salad, they had to actually help me mix the kale. They had to smell it. They had to taste it. Otherwise, there was no way I was going to get them to eat it. So the diet that my family and I have is what I call a plant-based diet. So it pretty much just says it all. We eat lots of grains. We get our protein from rice and beans. We eat lots and lots of beans. We have probably every kind of bean you could think of in bulk. We buy them all the time, and that's something we stay stocked up in. So being raised in the Caribbean, I know the importance of eating lots of beans. And my husband, who is also not necessarily, I think he's second generation American, so he eats lots of beans too. So it's one way to get that protein in and not to feel like you have to eat soy to replace the meat. And I'm glad to come to a place where I don't feel like I have to replace that meat in the meal. So it's definitely an adventure.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for that. And how about when you became pregnant? Because you've gone through five pregnancies with your children and bringing them up. How was it being vegan through your pregnancies? Did you supplement with anything? Did you get any deficiencies or anything? How was that?
Well, I was growing up, I've always been anemic and had low iron. So my mother has always had to bring my iron levels up from a young child. And she also became anemic when she was pregnant with me. So she would use a lot of wheatgrass. And it made her nauseous. So she would drink it, but then she would get nauseous and have to suffer that. But at least her body was getting what it needed to supplement for that, the iron loss. When I became pregnant with our first son, I did take a pregnancy vitamin, and I supplemented that also with the Go Green. I can't remember exactly the brand. I think it's Alive, and it's a greens multi. I guess it has like lots of vegetables, and everything is like in a powder form, and it has spirulina and chlorella and lots of live foods in it. And I would drink that as a smoothie every day. And I was going to a midwife at the time because we had that child at a water birth center here in California, and I was told that my iron levels were perfect, and I didn't have anemia. Though that was the only issue for me. It was to overcome that low iron. Right. And that worked perfectly. When I became pregnant with our second son, I decided I didn't want to take vitamins anymore. I was like, you know what? I just don't want to do that. I want to try to find a way to do this, in a way that where I know exactly where it's coming from, and I don't want to have to swallow this huge pill anymore or vitamin anymore. So I went all the way with the green supplement and would mix it in my drinks and do it maybe once or twice a day. And I was very energetic during that pregnancy. So I think that not only was my iron level pretty high, but I didn't have any other health issues at all. So for both of those pregnancies, there was a lot of energy. I was always busy, and I did exercise. I took long walks because we did cloth diaper, and we had to go to the laundromat to wash those. Right. So the running joke was that I'm 8.9 months pregnant, and I'm walking a stroller down to the laundromat to wash these clothes, and I'm being told by family members, you need to go sit down because you're going to have this baby any day now. But I think all that energy that I had helped me to have a short labor with my second son. Okay. And so as far as my 3 home births, I did not supplement. I didn't use multivitamins at all, and I just really tried to eat as healthy as possible, and I made sure that I drank a lot of smoothies because I felt like it was going directly to the baby and not have to be broken down and processed. And I found that I was very energetic as well.
And how about the your mental and emotional state while pregnant? Because I know you put a great deal of importance on that, and you've talked about that in the past. Is what do we need to understand about that?
Yes, it's very important to be able to cleanse your thoughts when you're expecting a baby, and to be able to, if possible, surround yourself with positive thinking individuals. And in ancient times, sometimes the woman, when she was expecting, she would actually leave her village and go off into the wilderness and be alone with her own thoughts as she prepared for her birth process. And so that's not something that we can necessarily do in modern times. So I think that it's important to cleanse your thoughts using birth affirmations, I like to call them. And when I offer my consultations, I always send birth affirmations, positive affirmations to my clients for them to read, either if they're meditating or to chant them before bed or when they're rising in the morning. and just being able to communicate with your baby. And, the hormones can go crazy during pregnancy. You just have this abundance of emotions, and it's important to know that that has its place, and that it doesn't mean that you're crazy. It just means that your body is adjusting to a new being that's being formed within you, and so it's important to just try to find balance within that. So, yeah, I definitely feel like your thoughts are alive, our actions are alive, but our thoughts are very much alive, and it's important to know the root of where a thought is coming from. If it's a negative thought concerning your birth process or your pregnancy, then usually you can go right to the root of that, and it may not even be coming from you. It could be coming from someone that said something to you or something around you, and it's just important to be aware of that.
Okay, so is it just to have this awareness of the effect that our thoughts and our emotions will have, or do you have some strategies as well that you put in place?
Yes, it's both. It's important for the mother to be aware, and also some things that I like to do with my clients is breathing visualizations and creative visualizations. So just coming to a state of mind where you can visualize a positive birth process, an empowered birth process, meaning that the woman is actually being able to see herself having not only the kind of birth that she wants to have, but being able to be aware, being able to be empowered by her actions, by what she expresses to her caregivers, by being a part of the birth process rather than the birth happening and you just being there while you're giving birth. In the hospitals, there's a tendency for the woman to lose all power, and not only the woman to lose all power and to give that to the doctors and to the nurses that are around her, but also her husband or her mate tends to not be included in that as well. And so it's really important that if the mother is expecting and she's in a positive relationship, that the mother and the father to be are able to talk through any kinds of emotions, any kinds of issues, any kind of thoughts that she might be having or that he might be having, because his are just as important as hers, and being able to come to a place where they can agree on what they're expecting. And of course, she's the one that's giving birth, but he's a huge part of that. So it's just really important for the mother to be able to talk things through and to find out the root of whatever emotions that she might be experiencing.
Okay. So all 5 of your births were conscious natural births. The first 2 were water births in the birthing center, and then your last 3 were unassisted or just assisted with by your husband at home.
Yes.
I suppose there's a lot to talk about within 5 births, I'm sure.
Yes.
But maybe you can just give us an understanding of how it was going to the birthing center doing the water births, and then maybe a comparison to that, or why you chose that rather than a regular hospital birth, and then maybe also the unassisted births or the births at home, and maybe some of the pros and cons of each.
Okay. Yeah. Let me begin by saying that as a small child, I witnessed a birth because my mother and my aunt, for some reason, and I just put this together a few years ago, people would call on them whenever they were in labor. For whatever reason, I'm not sure exactly, because my mother's not a midwife, my aunt is not a midwife, but for some reason they were called upon. And I witnessed birth as a child, as a small child. And I remember there was one birth that I saw, and I just thought it was the most beautiful thing in the world. I mean, there were just these, as a child, seeing it from a child's perspective, there was just all these colors coming from this woman as she gave birth, reds, blues, purples, whites, and I just thought it was beautiful. And not every child would have thought that. And in fact, the other children, it was quite a few of us, the other children that were there, they didn't feel that way, but I did. And so I've always carried that with me. And in fact, my mother had an unassisted Lotus birth with me because her midwife she was flying to Hawaii to find her midwife, and I was almost born on the plane. She went into labor on the plane, and her midwife was on another island, so she ended up giving birth with her sister and a friend in Oahu. So she actually did an unassisted Lotus birth with me, and I think that somehow I channeled that energy when we researched into having the water birth, because it's all in stages. And my advice would be that parents take it easy on yourself and just know that there are baby steps. So not everybody's going to jump into an unassisted birth. Some people are going to choose other methods as their first birth. It's all up to the parents. But for me and for my husband, our decision to do a water birth first was because we were going to a hospital when I was pregnant with our first son, and we were in Atlanta, Georgia, and we chose to have a midwife as well as a doctor. But in that hospital, I didn't feel like I was respected or treated like a person. I felt like I was being treated almost like an animal. And this is just my experience. There were times where I was being talked down to because of my perspectives on natural childbirth, and it just didn't sit well with me. So when my husband and I decided to move to San Diego, I looked into birthing centers here, and I was about 6 months pregnant. And we moved here to California from Atlanta, and I found a water birth center here in San Diego, and went ahead and signed on and decided to give birth there. And that was a step up from the hospital in Atlanta. So I was treated with more respect. I was treated as a person, as a woman. And so that was a step up for me and for my husband. He was not included very much in the checkups and things like that. They would ask him to wait outside. So he was actually not really treated with a whole lot of respect during that pregnancy. But during the birth, he was given a little bit more respect as far as being a part of and being included in the birth process. He was able to come in and be with me while I was laboring and everything like that for the entire time. But there were some instances where the midwife was trying to be dominant over him. I mean, we had already decided we were not going to have an induced labor no matter how long it took to give birth to this child. And it took about 23 hours. So at a certain point, the midwife, she requested or she decided that she was going to birth the water bag. And I didn't really know where I was. I was kind of out of it. And my husband was very serious and firm that no, Aida has already made the decision. She doesn't want to do that. Please do not do that. And she did it anyway. And so he was really upset about it, but we were still in the process, so he couldn't really direct anything towards her at that time. Okay. But it stuck with us for a very long time. So after that birth, which was still a very beautiful birth process, my husband and I went away from it feeling like we had been taken advantage of to a degree, of where the midwife did not recognize our decision not to birth the water bag. Because he could have been born within his bag of waters, which is a beautiful thing to happen. So it wasn't necessarily a bad thing that his water bag had not birthed.
Right.
So and it was just very interesting that the midwife would not allow him to be a part of that decision. And when we were expecting our second son, we went back to the same water birth center, and everything was pretty much fine. But then at a certain point, I was asked to take this glycerin drink. It was to check my diabetic level, my sugar level, and to check and see if I had diabetes. And I said, I'll check into it. They give you the drink to take home, and then I took it home and I did research about it, and I found out that it was linked to certain conditions of the baby, causing problems with deformations with the baby and everything. Wow. I said, we went back the next day and I said, I cannot drink this. And I was treated very poorly because of this. The midwife at the birth center, well, she actually just told me, well, you can't give birth here if you don't take this test. So I said, well, I won't give birth here. You know, I just won't do it. And she went out the door. She came back in and she said, oh, we'll just take some blood, a blood sample, and that should be fine. And I was just looking at her like, I cannot believe that you just tried to test me to see if I was going to give in to you. You know, what is that? And so that's when I made the link that not every person is who they say they are. And if a person is supposed to be assisting me in my own birth process, then she should be able to find a way around something as simple as drinking a chemical drink that could be detrimental to my child. So we gave birth to the baby there, and it was another really nice experience. But what I came away, the thoughts that I came away from that birth process with were that I'm not going to be put through this kind of process again. You know, and when we became pregnant with baby number 3, I started looking up midwives, and I said, I'm not going to give birth at that birth center again. I'm going to have to find someone who can come to my house and help me give birth at home. It was very hard to find what I was looking for. And then right when I was going to give up and say, well, we'll just go back there again, I came across Laura Shanley and Unassisted Birth, her website, and I was blown away. And I just felt this sense of relief of, oh, all these women have done it themselves. I'm going to do it myself. And I printed out lots of information. I just devoured the website. I mean, I just looked into everything that she had on her website, and I was just feeling so strong and knowing that if they can do it, I can do it too. And I had completely forgotten that my mother had done the same thing, so it was already in me the whole time. And so I just kept digging deeper and deeper. I learned about human anatomy. I refreshed my mind on the way the woman's body works and the pregnancy and the birth process. And I just really did a lot of research. And I was really in a place where I could actually research the information and keep it in my mind. And it didn't just go in one ear and out the other because it was important to me. And so now I fully understand why children don't always learn everything you teach them. It has to be important to them. And so this was very important to me. And I also brought my husband into it. I said, you know what? We're going to do it ourselves. And I showed him the website, and I gave him information and everything. And I didn't know it at the time, but he was actually hesitant. He didn't tell me until much later that he was hesitant about it. But he did the research and everything, but he was like, are you sure you don't want to go to a water birth center? We could just drive, you know, it won't be an issue. We'll just drive out there. It's fine. And I said, no, I'm not going to be poked. I'm not going to be prodded. I'm not going to be told what to do with my own body and my own child. And I want to do it myself. And I got so much negativity from family members whom I love. And I remember crying because people were saying, this is wrong, and how can you do this? And, you know, your baby's in danger. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe people are thinking this way. And I was just so hurt by that. But I got through it. We gave birth to our beautiful daughter, our first daughter, and it was such an amazing birth experience. And one thing that I can say about when people are on a plant-based diet, that birth is not messy. It's not a huge mess the way they make it look on television. It's very clean, and it's very beautiful, and it's nothing like what the media portrays it to be. At least my experience was just wonderful. And I looked into hypnobirthing during that pregnancy. That was the first pregnancy that I did not take any vitamins, and I just only did plant-based foods. And actually, I did not even take supplements during that pregnancy. It was a very nurturing pregnancy, just very gentle. And my daughter, she is also very gentle and soft and delicate. And I know that is just directly coming from the wonderful laid back birth and the wonderful pregnancy that I had with her. It
Yeah.
was just beautiful.
Okay.
Um, and I don't know if you want me to keep going through my other two or not.
Well, sure. Just briefly, was it a similar situation?
Yes.
Yeah, what
The
happened?
only,
Yeah.
yeah, the only difference between that birth and the birth of our second daughter, our fourth child, was that for that pregnancy, I said, you know what, I'm going to work out. And so I got all these pregnancy workout videos, and I worked out every day from about 3 months pregnant up until a few days before I gave birth.
Hmm.
And the difference between that pregnancy and the birth and the birth before that, I was so physically fit that she just kind of like popped out, and she's so strong. I mean, she's muscular and thick, and her temper and everything. And I know that it's a direct reflection of that pregnancy. I was
Right.
like, I was on the ball. I said, you know what? I've done this before. I've got it. And I really stayed in shape. I mean, I did push-ups, and it just was very empowering. And this is not for everybody, and not every
Mm.
pregnancy, because with our last baby that we just had 9 months ago, I tried to work out, and it hurt for me to do any squats or any stretches. I mean, it felt like this is the wrong thing to do. And I
Okay.
tried to take a supplement, but the baby, he told me that he didn't want me to take it.
Hmm.
So I listened to him. I didn't work out at all, and I didn't take any supplements. And he's a very healthy, happy baby, and we had a wonderful birth experience with him as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing that journey. Your journey. You've got great perspective because you've had 5 children and you've gone through the hospital, the water birth, the home birth, and home birth, unassisted birth while working out and not working out, and etc. So yeah, it's phenomenal perspective you have, and
You.
understanding and experience on the whole thing, and I'm sure that that's very, very beneficial for many people out there, for sure.
Thank you.
And you said that you were actually a Lotus birth, that your mother had a
Yes,
Lotus birth with you. So by by Lotus birth, does that mean that the cord wasn't cut? It was
that's right.
just allowed to naturally fall off after how long was that?
Um, I believe what she told me was that it was just a couple days
Okay.
until it fell off, maybe a week or so. And what that provided her with was an opportunity to stay in the bed with me
Hmm.
for as long as she needed to recover from the birth and everything. This was only her second child, so um, she was able to rest, and she was able to be pampered, and she was able to do all those things that a woman deserves to be able to experience after she goes through a birth process. So,
Right.
yes, it just means that she was able to put herbs on the cord, and that makes it fall off a lot faster, like golden seal and different herbs like that. And it was a wonderful experience for her. Now, with our children, we didn't do any Lotus births. With the two that were born in the water birth center, the cord was cut and clamped.
Hmm.
And at the time, we didn't understand much about that. So, but we were allowed, we were given the opportunity to nurse baby before the cord was cut. So I believe that, and I'm not completely sure with our first son whether or not they allowed the cord to stop pulsating before clipping it. But with our second son, I believe so, and because I asked for that.
Hmm.
And with our children that we gave birth to at home, we did not cut the cord until the placenta was released and until it stopped pulsating, which actually with the last baby, the cord was too short. So we had to cut it early because I couldn't bring him up to nurse without cutting it. And it did stop pulsating. But yes, being able to allow the cord to stop pulsating, that's something that's been very big for us because we understand that the placenta is the baby's first home, and we respect the placenta quite a bit for taking care of baby for that whole time and allow it to finish its little transition. Doesn't take very long for us to do that, and and be able to give that vessel the time to end that union between the baby and its first house. So, yes, lotus birth is a beautiful thing. I haven't experienced it personally, except with my own being born.
Right. Because something that I heard was that, or that I read was that the child's immune system, the baby's immune system is like much stronger from having a lotus birth, and that would be one of the reasons for it. So I wonder, with yourself growing up, how do you think that being a lotus birth yourself, did you find that you had heightened better health than people around you, or maybe a different awareness or an experience that was different?
Yes, I do believe that I've always felt rooted, grounded, and I've always known who I am. And so I think that can stem from the lotus birth, but it's important for people to remember that it's about your environment as a child. That can play a huge part in it. But also just living a natural lifestyle, being aware and being conscious, like you mentioned before. All of that comes together to help your child to feel grounded and to feel like he or she doesn't have to search out and seek out a master or a guru or someone that's going to tell them how to live their lives, but being able to be aware and being able to make decisions on their own and to know who they are. And to know their relationship to Earth and to humanity in general comes from the culture that they're raised around, comes from how much nature they're able to interact with, and of course the birth process. But it's important for parents or women and men, everyone, to just keep in mind that no matter what type of birth process that you experience with your baby, that it still is empowered as long as you're informed, as long as you know what's going on with your body, as long as you're playing a part or a role in the process, that it can still be a beautiful experience.
All right. And were any of your births complicated with any of your children?
Not at all. And that is, I feel like I was made to have babies. I mean, my body has never experienced anything during the pregnancy or during the birth that I would say is complicated. I would say the most complicated thing that I've probably experienced is that the placenta took a while to deliver, but that was during our third baby, and we did not remember to massage my stomach to help the placenta to be released. So I actually kept having contractions for like 30 minutes or so, maybe an hour, where if I had just massaged my stomach, the placenta would have released and it would have been, all the way over. But it's just baby steps. You learn as you go. And but that was the most complicated thing that I could think of that we've experienced.
Right.
Everything.
And it's interesting you mentioned that about the placenta, because when I was speaking with Laura Shanley, she said that she knew someone who, a couple, and the placenta birthed 4 days later, and they just said, okay, it's fine, we'll come out whenever it wants to come out, and that's it. And they just trusted in that, and 4 days later the placenta came out, and that was totally fine, no problem. So she was saying,
amazing.
so she was saying that's not a complication. It will come out when it's ready to come
Okay,
out.
good. Well, then I've had no complications. That's a good thing for me to be able to say.
Yeah.
But that is really amazing for the placenta to stay in, and then they're still, the mother's still healthy. That just shows that everyone's body is different and capable of giving birth.
Yeah.
Naturally.
And I suppose maybe part of the reason that you've had so many great births is maybe you're having such a strong and centered partner as well, to support you through it. What would you say about the importance of that?
Oh, it's so important. My husband, he has been just so amazing with each one of our birth experiences, and he works really hard to keep the environment positive and flowing and clean, and he just picks up the slack whenever I needed to rest. He's always been really careful about who he allows to come into our home during the entire pregnancy,
Right.
and he just doesn't allow anything to come in that's negative. And so he has been, I call him like a Superman when it comes to when I was in labor and we have our other children playing around the house. You can just see him dashing from one room to the other. He scrubs. This is like his process. He goes shopping, gets all these groceries and stocks up when I'm in early labor, because it is a process. It takes time. And it's not something that's just going to happen like that where the baby just pops out. So he's able to go, of course, that's good too if that does happen, but he's able to go to the store, get everything that we need, come home, and he's just so calm and relaxed and peaceful that it helps me to stay balanced and harmonious with what I'm going through. So he has the children okay in the other room. He scrubs the walls in the bedroom or whichever room we're using for the birth. He sterilizes the bathroom because I usually would labor in the tub. So everything is sparkling clean, ready to receive the baby, and I'm just amazed by how well he does with this. I mean, with this last baby, he actually sat there just holding my hand while I was having the surges, just holding my hand in the middle of the night and just being calm and just being balanced and being focused and touching my stomach and just talking to the baby. And so it was just really this amazing relationship that he had with the baby. And so, I mean, I'm just so proud of him by the way that he's able to maintain and be calm and not be nervous. And I mean, I remember seeing on television, like, I don't know if you've seen The Cosby Show, but Huxtable, you know, he's a doctor, and there's always this husband whose wife is giving birth, and the husband is fainting, and the husband is, I can't do this, and you know, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, that's not my husband. You know, he's very much focused, very much there, very much aware and able to deal with it, and he knows that it's a natural process, and he knows that he has to be a part of it. And so it's important for the husband, for the mate, to be a part of that experience, because when he delivered our baby, he was able to seal a bond with them. And I mean, our children are so close to their father that it was just so, it's just so worth it for him to be there. And so a lot of times the husband is removed from the room. Well, lately, more recently, that's not the case as much as it used to be, but there were times where the husband wasn't even allowed in there. I mean, he'd be pushed out. They tell him to go buy a box of cigars and celebrate. And, you know, it wasn't really something that he was allowed to be a part of. So it's really important for the husband to come into the checkup, to come in and ask questions. I mean, just feel like you're part of the process. It's really important to be able to do that. It's empowerment for the husband as well.
Yeah, it's awesome, and it's clear to see that you have an amazing relationship with your husband, and you teach relationships as well. So maybe could you give us maybe your some of your top tips or top secrets on having a great relationship?
Well, I think that a lot of what we experience that's so beautiful and harmonious in our relationship is based on respect and support. One of the things that Lennon and I try to demonstrate to our children first, and also to the people who watch our shows and who've listened to our radio shows, is that having a high level of respect for your mate is having a high level of respect for yourself. And so that's something that we try to maintain. We try to be silly with each other and joke around and keep everything light and moving and flowing. And one thing that I can say is that we just celebrated our 11-year anniversary of the day that we met this month, and we've never had an argument for 11 years.
That's incredible.
This is something that people, they're just like, wow, are you sure? Are you telling the truth? And it's very true.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the reasons why we've never argued is because we don't want to hurt each other.
Mm-hmm.
And arguments are usually like an ego battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
Like my ego against your ego. You know, whose ego is the strongest? Who's going to win? The competition. And something that my husband talks about a lot in his documentary work is the male versus female war imprint program, which is something that's given to us through media, that women and men should be at odds with each other at all times. And this is something that we try to do the opposite of and demonstrate the opposite of for our family, for our children, and for the people that we try to help.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't have to be that way. And I think that everyone can experience positive relationships without the arguments, without the fighting. So if we can do it, other people can do it too.
Okay.
And we just don't have time to engage in those kinds of things because we have children to be responsible for. So it takes time away from arguing.
Yeah. Makes sense. Let's talk a little bit about bringing up the children. You're bringing up your children as vegans, correct? Yeah. Do you find do you need to supplement with their diets? How is it for them being brought up as vegan, etc.? Maybe some of the, like, maybe if they go to other kids' houses, etc. You know, what there must be some tough times with that as well, and they might be asking questions of, you know, mommy, why don't I eat that? Or can you just give an understanding of it and some of the issues that might come with it.
Oh yes, definitely. That has been an issue that we've dealt with for a really long time as far as family events. But first I'll begin with your first question. With our children, we don't necessarily supplement, but I do keep spirulina in the house, and we mix that in their water when they drink their water, and they just get really excited because it's green water. Mm-hmm. So they're like, "Oh, mommy, can I have spirulina? Can I have spirulina?" And so they'll drink that up, and that helps with, you know, low iron, and it helps to give them high energy. Which, of course, do children really need more high energy? But you know, so we just try to keep lots of fruits and vegetables around the house that they can choose from, and we try to eat. You know, we try to eat more raw foods. This is something that we're working on, so we try to implement as much raw foods as we can. Mm-hmm. But we're finding that the more we offer, the more they're asking for. So I think that the best thing to do is just to keep your children involved in the act, or engaged in the act of food preparation. Mm-hmm. And that keeps them that their curiosity will allow them to try new things, and being able to explain the science behind foods, why they're different colors, why do they taste certain ways, where are they grown. One of my children is really into geography, so if I offer food that's from India, he'll say, "Oh, I'll try that. That's from India." So it won't matter exactly what it is, but the fact that it's from another country, he's willing to at least try it. Mm-hmm. So that's part of the homeschool process for us. And the fact that we bring our children into the kitchen, or bring our children into anywhere where we're doing any kind of work, keeping them as a part of that, it helps them to learn, and it helps them to, you know, open up to new ideas, and especially dealing with food. So as far as going to other people's homes, that's one of the reasons also why I created the cookbook, was because a lot of those recipes are foods that we bring to other people's homes for celebrations, and that way our children have more options. They don't have to just eat what's being offered at someone else's home that might not have the same diet as ours. And most of the children that are already there usually want to eat the food that I bring also, because it's tasty foods, and children like to try new things. So usually if we're going to a family event, I'll bring a big pot of chili, I'll bring cornbread, I'll bring some kind of dessert, which I've gotten really into vegan desserts lately, and it's usually a big hit wherever we go, or when people come to our house, they eat everything up, and a lot of times they don't miss any kind of meat. They're very satisfied with what we offer. So it can be done.
Yeah.
That's not something I think that people should stress out about. I think that as long as you're bringing something that your child can eat and explaining to them the reasons why, because children need to know why.
Sure.
The reasons why they can't eat that frosted cake that has pink, purple, and green frosting on it is because those are chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
And so my children's joke is when they see the ice cream truck go by, they say, "Oh, there goes the chemical truck. We don't eat that."
Right.
So they steer clear of chemicals. I mean, they read labels. My oldest is 8, and his brother, who's 7, they both read very well, and they will read the ingredients on something, and they'll let me know, "Hey, mommy, we don't eat this," because grandma likes to bring food when she comes to visit, and I don't like having to tell her, "Oh, we can't eat that." So when my son will read it, and he'll say, "Grandma, we don't eat that," and then she's okay with it when he says it, because that's her grandson. It's like, okay, grandma will take it. So it's actually a good experience. It's a good learning experience for them to be engaged in, to be a part of making the choices of what we're going to eat. And also going to the grocery store, children can be involved in that too, as far as making it a learning experience and letting your child read the ingredient labels, letting your child be involved in what foods that you're purchasing, so that when you get home and prepare them, it's not a surprise to them. They know that they went and they helped you buy that, so now they're going to get the taste. That's a big thing for children.
Yeah, awesome. And do you find that your children are healthier than other kids, or do they get sick often? Did you vaccinate your children? Would be another question.
No, we did not vaccinate our children, and they actually only get sick maybe once a year, sometimes not even once a year. So like within this last year, I don't remember them getting sick, and I just asked my husband, "Did we get sick at all this last year?" And there'll be months and months that go by, and they won't have a sniffle, they won't have a cold, and so I do think that they're very healthy. And I think that we can be even healthier. And as we go along on our diet process, we'll be even healthier and more energetic. And no, we didn't vaccinate them. And it's kind of has been a challenge with other people, because vaccinations is such a big deal to everyone that has been brought up in a society where you're dependent on doctors, you're dependent on medications. If you have just a headache, you want to reach for Tylenol or aspirin, or whatever it might be that you're going through. A lot of people, they'll jump on that. They'll go and grab a pill for it. But with us, when our children didn't feel well, at the few times that they're not feeling well, I always just make a big pot of soup, or we'll just do fruits, or they'll fast. It depends on what it is that their body is asking for. Your child will let you know if they're not able to eat. If they can't digest food that day, then okay, they're not feeling well. This is just their body's way of letting us know that he can't take any foods in right now. And we've never really offered them cough syrup, never offered them, not even homeopathic products. We haven't. When our babies were teething, we didn't offer them anything. It's a natural process, and this, I guess it might seem a little hardcore for parents, but we just didn't offer it. We found other ways to deal with that, and usually making everything ourselves. If they do have a cough, then I would make them tea. I mean, it just seems like the natural thing to do. Or I'll look in my beautiful Back to Eden book by, I believe his name is Klaus. I'll look in there and find out what I can do to help my child feel better. And they rarely get sick, and that's really a good thing, that they don't get sick very often.
That's wonderful to hear. Really wonderful. Yeah. I just want to touch on homeschooling. Why did you choose to homeschool, and how's it going?
Homeschooling is going really well. I find that I've overcome a lot of the guilt that I used to feel because I was a teacher before I became a mother. So I taught in Montessori environments. I also was a daycare worker. So I've worked in both types of environments, the alternative environment as well
Hmm.
as the daycare system. So I've seen both sides, and what I wanted to do is combine, the best of each one with raising our children. And in the beginning, we weren't planning to homeschool when we had our first son. Um, that wasn't something that we had planned, but after a while, I decided, oh, I'm just going to teach him myself. I was fresh out of working at a Montessori school teaching kindergartners, and I just
Hmm.
said, well, hey, I can do this. And I looked into it, and I found that, through my research, that a lot of times when you've been a teacher before, you have to overcome a lot of what you've been taught to be a homeschool teacher.
Right.
And it was a really interesting process of letting go of guilt, not feeling like my child has to be on the same level as first graders that are in public school. Um, they don't have to be doing the same things. They don't have to learn at the same pace. They can learn on their own and still learn just as much, if not a lot more, than
Hmm.
children who might be in the public school system or even in private school. And we knew for sure we weren't going to send our children to public school no matter what, because we just don't, my husband and I just don't agree with the way children are being taught in public
Right.
school. Um, so I did a lot of research in finding out about being certified and, being a licensed home teacher and things
Hmm.
like that. But then I said, you know what? We're going to do it the alternative way and just teach our children.
Hmm.
And um, what my husband and I have been finding is that as we reach deeper and deeper into gaining sovereignty for our family and for our children, we're finding that there is no law that states that you cannot teach your children at home. And being bullied or harassed has not been an issue for us. So there's a lot of fear, just like with anything else. There's a lot of fear um, surrounding homeschooling. There's a lot of people that might be afraid to do that because they think that someone's going to knock on their door and say that they're going to take your child because you can't teach your own child. And that has never happened to us. We've never had anyone come and say your child has to now go to public school because we don't think that you're doing a good job. In fact, a lot of times when other children come over and hang out with our children, they're just looking at them like, wow, you're really smart, and when adults come around and they speak to our children just the way that our children talk and the amount of respect that they have for people and the conversations that our children have,
Hmm.
you can see a high level of intelligence there.
Hmm.
And so it's worth the act of being a home teacher. And also, Lennon and I are both entrepreneurs. We both work from home.
Yeah.
He makes documentaries and he does a lot of creative work and consultations. And I also do consultations. And I'm a jewelry designer, which my jewelry business just picked up within the last 2 years, where it's actually bringing in a lot of income. And what I'm finding is that it can be a challenge to be able to give our children the amount of attention that they need throughout the day. But what we try to do is make sure that their needs are always met. That always comes first.
Hmm.
And also making sure that they understand why mommy can't do that for you right now. Why does mommy have to work? So I explain the whole process to them. And I find that with them understanding that I'm working so that I can bring in money for the things that we need, things that you might want,
Hmm.
then they have a lot more patience with me instead of constantly, mommy, can you do this? Mommy, can you do that? So it's like being able to keep them engaged in that as well is really good, especially for children who are creative thinkers and who may decide to be entrepreneurs when they get older. It's important for them to see someone who's able to do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
Wow.
that's,
Yeah. Well done on bringing up 5 children, homeschooling, and
oh, thank you.
having your own business and everything as well. It's yeah, you're doing a phenomenal job.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah,
We try every day. Every day is a challenge, but it's a good challenge.
yeah. So tell us, you've got your jewelry business, you have your cookbook. Can you tell us if we want to get have a look at your jewelry, your book, where can we get that from?
Okay, yeah. My jewelry is available on Etsy under Native Style Beatery. That's NATIVE excuse me, Native Style Beatery. NATIVE STYLEBEADERY. And what I do is I make beaded jewelry that's reflective of indigenous cultures. So you'll see a lot of Zulu style beadwork. As well as Maasai and Native American, and I try to implement all of that into the type of beadwork that I offer. And also my cookbook is available on my husband's website currently at www.lenonhonor.com, LENONHONOR.com, and that's the Native Style Cookbook, a family-oriented approach to the plant-based diet. It's available in ebook format.
Great. And what do you offer? Any other services, consultations, or anything?
Yes, I also offer birth empowerment consultations. So if there is an expectant mother who would like to learn a little bit more on how to become more empowered in her birth process, you can contact me for information at aidahonor@yahoo.com. That's AYIDAHONOR@yahoo.com.
Great. And Aida, is there anything else you'd like to share just before we finish up?
Oh, I just want to thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you about these things that I'm very passionate about. I hope that something that I've spoken on today has helped someone in some way.
Yeah, it's been really awesome, and I think we're seeing this happening more, where people are just taking responsibility for their own lives and models of the world, and not just going with what everybody else is doing, because we're slowly all starting to see that the current model isn't really working that well, and there's a newer higher model, and I believe that you and your husband, your family, are a great example of that. So thank you very much thank you for taking the time, for speaking with us, and you shared a lot of great information and to how you live and everything else as well. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been an honor to be here.